We convene these sessions as the foundation because we believe that there is so much wealth from then the partners in the NGO sector. People have experiences that they can share, we can all share, you know, and also learn from each other. Besides only having kind of financial relationships, but we can also share resources, knowledge, and other things that we can all learn from each other. So this is one of those that we host, but we thought let us extend this.
By the way, your material does not print.
Okay, Senator, I will
Print out.
We'll mute people that are not supposed to be saying anything at this stage.
Is he in? I saw him.
Yes, Senator, please assist. Thank you very much. That has been resolved. Yeah, so thank you very much everyone for joining in. This session is about focusing more on early literacy and language development. We have invited Professor Carole Bloch, who has wealth experience in the space, in particular in early literacy in African multilingual setting, children from birth to even more beyond that. So she'll be sharing with us maybe like what she has observed and also maybe what she suggests we can do in our respective organizations and homes, and when we conduct our trainings and also maybe mentorships and support interventions that we have. Yeah, so we'll have her sharing that, and also in light, of course, of the recent PEARLS results that we saw in South Africa. So she'll also put that into context. Yeah, so without wasting so much time then, there's also Sunita from BBNF, who's just going to briefly talk about the project that we are doing together, Hanging Libraries, of course, improving access to books, and also not just books, actually quality books. So we'll start with Sunita, and then after Sunita, then we'll just go straight to Carole's presentation. And then also as Carole presents, please bring on your questions. I know that there'll be a lot of questions that will come up that she'll be open to interact with, or ideas maybe what we can do in our ECT centers, in our training session and so forth. So you're all welcome, colleagues. I have noted also those who need to leave, because I know that there is also like a net reading thing happening today also. So we also note that. Yeah, so Sunita, if you are ready, please come on. And those who have just logged in, please do drop your favorite childhood story in the chat room if you have not done yet. Sunita, are you there? Okay, cool. I see Sunita is here. Maybe she's struggling to come
Sorry,
up.
I'm here. I'm here. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Cynthia, can I share a screen, please?
Yes, you can. Sunita, are you winning?
Yes, I am. Thanks. Sorry about that. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Malusi, for giving us this opportunity. BBNF, as many of you already know, is a non-profit organization that donates books in the 11 languages. We have been in existence for the last 25 years, and we focus a lot on home language books. And our main, sorry, I've just got caught unaware here. Okay, sorry about it. Okay, and yeah, we are dedicated to fostering the love for reading, and we approach this by donating home language books. Concerns have risen over the last couple of years on utilization of the books, and that prompted us to support foundation-phase teachers incorporating the books into the classroom. For early childhood centers, we depend on training centers like many of you in this meeting to encourage the use of storybooks appropriately, and to encourage the use of with the ECD sites. While visually appealing and well-designed picture books play a crucial role in sparking the interest in reading, the display of books plays an equally important role. To address this, we have introduced the concept of a hanging library as one of our solutions. The design concept of the hanging library focuses on ECD sites. It takes into consideration factors such as security, size, accessibility, and easy replication for self-sufficient sites. The current size of the hanging library allows it to hang behind a door. It holds up to 40 books and can be easily hung up with a hook. This project does not only support Bibliona's efforts to provide quality books to children throughout the country, but it also supports the self-sustainable endeavors of organizations like Ikama Labantu, the Palani Mother Mentor Program. And in 2023, we would like to work with the Yelendela project. Each of these organizations are committed to making the services available to women who have completed training programs in order to make it possible to earn a living from their craft. In addition to the above, this project will also contribute to efforts to further ECD sites. They currently, we aim to be inclusive in each of the training centers. We want to engage with practitioners or caregivers so that the actual practitioners can get to choose the books that they want. In 2022, we only reached a small percentage of HCI centers, of centers supported by HCI. Through this project in 2023, we want to extend to the remaining training centers. Creating impact change cannot happen in silos. And this highlights how much we can accomplish when we work together. Over the past year, our project has grown through with many donors, allowing us to bring the hanging library to an additional 200 sites. This advancement extended as achieved in 2022, and we initially established the 130 that we have done in 2022. We would appreciate your feedback on this hanging library, and as it would help us to further advance our support to ECD sectors. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Sunita. Yeah, no, we definitely, from our end, we really like the hanging library concept because it will make it easier even for people who go into play groups. Then you can just carry it and then open it up when you meet with the children, and children should get a chance to play and enjoy books at the same time. So we thought we should also share that development from BlibUNF. So thank you very much. And thank you very much, everyone, for sharing your favorite childhood storybooks, or other stories, not only books, even stories, oral stories. I see that there are some people that like the same stories. And imagine this, if such a thing would happen in our ECT sites or schools, where actually it's easy to talk about what is your favorite story, and also when you talk about it, you become so excited because it evokes certain emotions in you and memories. So this is what I guess also Carole will be talking about as she is about to join in. I don't know if there are any questions for Sunita before we move to Carole. Are there any questions for Sunita? Okay, cool. If then they come later, then you can write it in the inbox. We welcome also the colleagues that have just joined in now. Carole, over to you. And just to put it in context, we have worked with Carole before as the foundation. We worked with her through Nali Bali in the past, and then also we worked with her through PRISA. in their project, Story Play project that was implemented in Frankfurt, Philippi, Belleville, and also Khayelitsha. Some of actually the goals of that project at the time were to stimulate interest in demand of holistic early literacy training and mentoring, and also to train and mentor a core group of early child development practitioners, and also to enable teachers in multilingual settings to afford young children between 2 to 6 years old appropriate early literacy opportunities. So we hope, Carole, will also get to learn more about what is appropriate and maybe what is an appropriate early literacy experiences, and also issues around training, and also activities. So over to you, Carole.
Thank you, Malusi and Moweni Nonke. Hello, everyone. I'm actually very far away from you, and it's so nice to be connecting today like this. And just to say, I've been doing this for so many decades that when I have to do something in an hour or a bit, I feel quite overwhelmed because it always feels like there's so much to say, and I can't really fit it all in. So I may not finish my presentation, but it doesn't really matter because all of this is a work in progress. And yeah, we're going to be continuing for some time. So let me just start with what everybody's talking about again at the moment. And this is this challenge with pearls, that children are actually reading worse, can we say? 81% now can't read for meaning. I looked at this report on the UNICEF study, which I thought was very interesting as well, happening just after the Pearls results came out. And we still are sitting with the situation of so few books in homes, that reading and storytelling is neglected, that so few people read regularly to their children. You can see the stats for yourself, and I'm sure you've all looked at this. These figures are giving us an indication that we, the adults in children's lives, are really not pulling our weight, despite all of our efforts. So, this phrase, every child must read for meaning by age 10, actually, we should not be talking about by age 10 for reading for meaning. Reading for meaning has to be happening right from the word go, and I'm going to be looking at that with you this morning. Some of you may have already heard me talk about the neuroscience research, but I'm going to go through it again today, because we really have to consider children as whole beings and look at this whole life of a baby who becomes a toddler, who becomes a young child, then grows up, of course. The factors that affect their learning to read are their whole lives, the biological, the societal, history, political, economical, and so on. We have these intersections of so many different factors in a young child's life. They're all significant for their learning journey as students, as learners. Before we go into that, let's just have a look here, because one of the things that really affects what opportunities we give young children is the way we understand how young children learn, what our perspective is. So let's just in the chat briefly jot down, who do you think has done this? What is it? What do they know about writing? Maybe what don't they know about writing? If it were you and you came upon this, what would you think? What would you do next? Why? Just a quick brainstorming. What's going on here? What is it telling us? What would you do if it were you and you came upon that? And I'm really doing this just to get us thinking about who we are in relation to pedagogy and young children's learning. What do we think about young children when they behave the way they do. I see a couple of comments here. The child is telling a story. Oh, okay, that's lovely. The child is telling a story. You're both saying the child's telling the story. What's it about? You'd smile, okay. Anyone else? Okay, Zanele, you would ask the child to explain what it says. Anyone want to say something about where the child has done their story? Is it okay for the child to put their story or their drawing on the walls? Child is imitating what they've seen adults doing. This is how they tell stories. It's happening in their lives. Okay, so we're coming from the child's perspective and we're talking about the child expressing themselves. That's great, yes. We could also, so we could spend the whole morning talking about this, also about where it's appropriate to write, where it's not appropriate to write. But yes, there's the child expressing themselves on the wall. Now let's just contextualize ourselves. We're in Africa, we're at the bottommost tip of Africa, and when we're thinking about early literacy, in my mind, I'm working with the context of diverse African settings, many different contexts actually. And what I've been trying to do for some time is bring together thinking about the African values of holism, relationships, interconnectedness, the multilingual apprenticeships and ideas of education through storytelling, through performance, which have largely through colonialism been undervalued, but they're there still. And how do they intersect with meaning-based multilingual early literacy programs or pedagogies which are holistic, story and play focused? Do these two intersect? And my contention is that they do intersect very well. And the demand for young children and for children as they grow and develop is for ongoing meaningfulness. From the start, meaningfulness, creativity and imagination as integral and essential for learning. And above all, and sort of connecting everything, is the power of play and story, which you've already alluded to in that first slide. So some principles: childhood is valid in itself as part of life and not just a preparation for adulthood. We can't think of learning to read and write in isolation of the principles of learning. Children are creative. They use symbols powerfully. Okay. I'm struggling here to get myself out of the way on the screen. There we are. We have to build on what children know and can do. We have to give them freedom with guidance. Okay, there, think of that drawing on the wall there. The freedom to draw, maybe the guidance to draw somewhere that isn't on our wall. Maybe it wasn't apparent that that was a wall. The child has an inner life, like we do. The child has an inner life which emerges especially under favorable conditions. And for that, play is highly, highly valued. Okay. Children are autonomous learners. They're self-regulating if they're given the chance. Right? Some more. Relationships matter. It's about unity. It's about community. That's what makes us feel safe and feel that we belong. Everything links. We are not sitting in discrete little cells. We are linking and connecting to each other. It's the power of Ubuntu. Children need knowledgeable adults to observe, support, and extend their learning. That, to me, is the essence of teaching: observing, supporting, and extending with the knowledge that you have. And then just to say that Vygotsky, and I'm going to be referring to imagination, I feel, throughout this presentation, Vygotsky talked about imagination as being not just an idle mental amusement, okay? Not merely an activity without consequences in reality, but rather a function essential to life. And I know most of us know this. We know and we talk about the importance of imagination, but we've got to really live it for our children. Most of these principles are Froebelian ones. Froebel was the inventor of the kindergarten. He was the first person to understand that women could be really good teachers of young children. And his principles I could talk about for days, but we can do that another time maybe. Another great educator, 1938, said the most important attitude that can be formed is that desire to go on learning. If the impetus is weakened instead of being intensified, much more than a lack of preparation takes place. The pupil is actually robbed of capacities which would otherwise enable him to cope with the circumstances that he meets in the course of his life. So if we aren't able to inspire children, to motivate children to learn, we rob them. And we can see this already happening through our education system. We rob them of what they need to be successful. And all of us, I don't even need to read this, we all know how significant the early years are. Young children are going on great adventures as they start their learning journeys, but are they? This is the question. What are our expectations of them? Increasingly, we know that there is this very didactic emphasis, even for our youngest children, because we're worried about them not being prepared for what school brings them. And I would argue that we really, really need to push back as strongly as we can against this, because we might think that we're pouring what they need into their heads, but we really have to think about how we learn. And our biology, basically our brains, are really significant for this. And all learning is based on the way our brains function. And it underlies, of course, then everything about how babies and young children learn. And I'm going to go through quite complex stuff here in as coherent way as I can. Please forgive me if I'm not as clear as you'd like me to be. Let me say, we all share some evolutionary endowed brain functions. Okay, here's a picture of the brain. Our brain evolved over time. So there was first this old reptilian brain, which is our instinctual brain. Then there was this part, the emotional brain, which is our feeling brain. That evolved on top of the instinctual brain, which is what makes you do this when you're nervous or frightened. And this huge big bit that happened is the later part of our brain. It is our rational or thinking brain. Every one of us develops a brain that looks like that. And the functions operate at great speed without our conscious awareness. So everything I'm going to be talking about now is not necessarily, or it isn't, appreciated consciously by us, but neuroscience research tells us that this is what's happening. And what is significant for early learning are these 4 aspects, I believe, and I'm going to go through them with you quickly. So the first one and the second one I'm putting together. Our brains are most active and hungriest, we know, in the first years of life. And that is because our brains are so plastic at first. Childhood is for learning. That's what children are designed to do. That's what Alison Gopnik says. She's a well-known American neuroscientist. Okay, our brains are plastic. They're structured for our survival. And to do this, what we have are all these connections which are changing all the time in the environment. And it is this that allows learning. And you can see that in the first months of life, there is this absolute forest of connections that grows. But in fact, all through our life, our brains are able to change, but it becomes more and more difficult as we get older. So based on experience, connections are made, and if we don't have certain experiences, connections wither and die, okay? But we're all learning all the time from experience. And the way that our brains do this is that they create a model of what's going on, what's to be learned. This is without us realizing. And then they update the model based on the experiences we have and the feedback we get to know if our model is okay or if we need to alter it. So as we learn, our brain is generating ever better approximations of what it is we're trying or we're needing to understand. And this is how learning to speak happens. If you think of the baby attempting, trying, forming, doing what they can with what they've got, the experiences they have with the people in their communities, teach them how to speak in the way that their community members speak. That's why we have different dialects, accents. That's why some communities are multilingual, some are not. And it is the feedback from the mothers and the others that allow a baby to learn to talk. It's not natural to learn to talk. Learning to talk is a social activity. Our brains are ready to learn to talk, but we learn to talk socially. And so do we learn to read in similar ways. So here's a baby.
Okay, so what does that say?
Nasi coco, nasi coco,
So note that that little guy is learning to read in isiXhosa. You'll see him again later. You see how he's pointing and he has an adult with him who is engaging with him. I want to show you a little bit more.
This one is the monkey. Which are Dana? Igual, your umbrella, yes. Unjana. The end.
The end. Okay. And then, so, I mean, we could have a seminar on just that little video, but we're not going to. We're just suggesting things this morning. Let's look at a little clip of learning to write. Okay, we'll stop that. Two different settings. The one thing that I'm sure you've all noticed is the noise level of the one compared to the other. And I just want to flag noise as a really big challenge for us in early childhood settings. But apart from that, that little child was behaving like a writer and doing what he or she understood adults do when they write. So the approximations that I was talking about are happening. That little child is approximating what writing seems like. Now, the question is, what does she need so that her approximations can become more and more conventional? Okay, so what do young children need? Well, they need adults interacting with them, helping them to notice how print works and helping them to have experiences exploring how print works. And the process that young children go through with emergent writing is dependent on the opportunities that they have to behave like writers and to try out writing. I think everybody knows this, but I'm not sure if everyone is aware of how much time and effort and how many experiences a young child needs. And I think it's in the breadth and the depth of opportunity that the difference happens. Okay, so what we're wanting is for the child to come to be writing in a conventional way where we can actually read what it says. And that happens, as I say, with a lot of intervention and experiences by the child with an involved, knowledgeable adult. Here, just this is, you can see that this is, I think you could maybe see that this is a child who knows how to form her letters or his letters, but the spelling isn't happening yet conventionally. So I know that this says, fix the shower, Dad. Fix the mop. Don't forget, Dad. Okay, and in this little very purposeful note, this child is displaying what children all around the world do with their language when they are learning to write in an emergent way, when they're allowed to invent their own spelling. They do this kind of thing, using what they can to express themselves. Okay, so now we come on to the third feature that I want to talk about to do with our brains, and that is the emotions. And we have these built-in affective or emotional systems. These are operating through neurotransmitters and chemicals and so on. They're not something that we've invented. They're physical processes called affective systems, and they give rise to our emotions. And you will know, each one of us knows, that we have emotional tags, like a little tag, like a name tag, attached to our memories. What we don't realize is that actually at an unconscious level, these attach to all our memories and shape all our brain functioning from birth onwards. They support cognition and perception, what we see, what we perceive, and they stimulate and guide thought and learning. And if our affective systems are not working, thinking doesn't and learning doesn't. And there are three key ones that I want to talk to you about here for learning and for learning literacy, okay? The seeking system, the need to find meaning. We are born with these systems. We emerge from our mother's wombs with these systems in our brains. The bonding system, the need to belong as social beings. We are born needing to belong. This is evolutionary given to us because it's how we succeed in surviving. The play system, we are born needing to rehearse and play life symbolically. These are not optional extras. Meaning is not optional, bonding is not optional, and nor is playing. So let's look at them a little bit. The need to find meaning. We all know, we all talk about toddlers as being busy. They're busy, they're trying to find out. It's the seeking system, which is directing them, driving them to find out how things work and how to understand what is happening in our world. And it's so that the power is in personally meaningful activities. The problem is when we give children meaningless activities and they become bored, bad behavior, and give up. Think about that in terms of what reading and writing we do with them. The need to belong. The bonding system drives our need to belong as social beings. And this is the power, the extreme power of role models for identity and for the social and cultural practices in our community. It also leads to us cooperating, caring. It leads to us using language to communicate. We do the work we need to do because we have to, we're driven to communicate. And of course, reading aloud, you can think of that as a bonding experience. Reading aloud is one of the crucial underpinning pillars of early literacy, of later literacy, in fact. Our children are observing us keenly. We are the role models for them. If we are reading, they will be trying to read. If we are reading to them, they will become part of it, because we are the way that we learn in terms of our cultural and social practices, which reading and writing are, and which learning to read and write are part of, is that, what did I do? We develop through our changing participation in the activities of our communities. And these also change. We make them change. So we have agency to make them change. This is what the pillar on which Nalibali was built and is still trying to effect. Okay, so there you go. Here, the little one is interested in the bookshelf because she's seen adults reading, and then you get this symbolic behavior where children express their inner life into the outer world by reading with the toys, which they become emotionally connected to, which give them a sense of belonging and of feeling comfortable and confident. So the need to play. Right, the play system is, I don't even need to tell you all about this, because I know that play is extremely important in early childhood settings in South Africa. I think the important point to take from this is its connection to literacy, and let's have a look at that. Play we can think of as story in action. Vivian Gassenpaley called it nothing less than truth and life, which is very beautiful, I think. And when we observe children playing, we can see this, the truth and life in their play, which tells us it's important for them. Both play and story need imagination. And part of what we did in our story play, which Malusi was referring to, was tried to elevate the status of imaginative thinking. One of the strategies was to have a little box and guess what might be in the box. I haven't got time to go through that in any detail now, but children display this imagination and this thinking and this linking of what's important to them. Here's our old colleague Ntombi's children many years ago, and this is just a very interesting little clip which I'd like you to have a brief look at.
Pink. Oh, show me. Oh, train, oh, yeah, a train, yeah. Oh. Mom, I do want
So there you see these little children. I think you would have seen that they had been inspired by the train in a book. So that was their first-hand experience of seeing a train in a book, and then they built a train from the books, which we could discuss whether that was such a good idea. And then they were the trains, and it just brings together the way that everything links in play and story for young children. It's part of what they do. That's how they are. Okay, now the fourth one, predictions and patterns. Actually, this is obviously just really touching on these functions. But this one's really important, particularly higher up, but as in talking about how children learn to read when they're in the more formal settings of primary school, but it begins in the earliest years. Our brains are continuously predicting. We're not aware of it, but they are guessing in advance. They're looking for and using patterns to get to meaning in the most economic way. If you think of it, we have so much information coming at us. We could never process it all bit by bit. So what we do is we look for what's familiar, we ignore that, and what's new, we have to take notice of. And so we use the whole lot of it to predict what is there. So for example, this is a nice way of seeing it with a visual illusion, where what can you see there in your mind? What did you notice? Note it down quickly. You're seeing a triangle. If you're seeing a triangle, are you really seeing a triangle? Where are the lines of the triangle? They are not there. Your mind is filling in what's not there based on prior experience. If you had not experienced a triangle before, you may well not have filled in to see that triangle, or for that matter, those circles, or if you were a player of computer games, Pac-Man, whatever you saw depended on your prior experiences. The same with reading, you see. If you read in English, and if you grew up with nursery rhymes, or if you have nursery rhymes now that are the English ones, Mary, we can read Mary Had a Little Lamb because we know it. This is where the oral language comes into reading and experience. You can read this even though it is not written correctly. It also points to the significance of reading in a language that you understand, and the difficulty of having to learn the language and how to read it at the same time. Okay, so we're predicting, we're guessing all the time. Why? Because context is crucial and experience allows us to predict. So the richer the experiences, the better equipped a young child is when they are engaging with print and text. And the pattern of narrative, the pattern of rhymes, of stories, of songs are what make it easy to remember. And we all know how we remember the refrains of songs, how we remember little rhymes, much easier than remembering text that gives us no clues, no aids. So it's because whole chunks of meaningful text are stored in the short-term memory, and this is what avoids overload, okay? So the patterns of narrative, the pattern of story. Here we can get a little moment with this little guy again. I think he's younger here, and his mum is reading him a story now. And I just want you to look at the patterning and the opportunities for him to fill in that she gives him.
Welcome.
Because he came this morning. Is that the milkman's carb? What's that? Milk? Wow, that's the milkman. It can't be the boy from the grocer, because this isn't the day he comes. Zero. Here's a bye. And it can't be Daddy because he's got his. Wow. We better open the door and see. So we opened the door. And there was a big, furry, strappy. Wow. Excuse me, but I'm very.
Okay, I'm going to stop that there. This tiny little guy, young children are so capable of learning to read and write. That's what I'm trying to show you here. It's about the opportunities and the interactions. What makes stories so powerful? Well, the story form releases neurotransmitters in the brain, which are things that are too scientific for me to understand, but things like cortisol, the stress hormone during the tense parts, oxytocin, which is the feel-good hormone during the emotional parts. And the point is that these things are real. The oxytocin is the bonding, breastfeeding, released hormone. And when we have stories, there's research to show how this happens to us and we feel great. And what feels good, we want to do again and again. And it's that our brains process narratives, the pattern of narratives, and the emotion of narratives in a way that transports us into the world of stories, and we connect emotionally. Okay, and of course, the more we do it, the better we do it. Now, a little bit of reading, and this hints at one of the biggest issues that we're grappling with in terms of literacy teaching. And I am struggling to make myself, my point understood, but I'm going to try with you. We have two roots involved with reading. There's one there and there's one there, okay? Both are activated from the early years. They're not there just for reading, they're there for all kinds of functions. But both of them happen from the earliest years. The one, which is called the dorsal root, involves decoding, okay? The other one, the ventral root, does not, okay? So one involves decoding, the other does not. So if you think of the letters, the alphabet, sounds, and so on, that's the one root, and the other one is involving holistic vision. We see the whole rapidly. We see McDonald's, the child recognizes, it says McDonald's, it says Marmite, it says whatever. You know how tiny children see the whole. So that is this one root. And the point is that mature readers like us use both roots. And there's an argument about whether young children are able to use both roots when they're learning to read. I claim they do. They definitely do. But others claim that they don't. And that's why you have to concentrate on the small parts, the phonics, the letters, the sounds, and then get to comprehension. It's not a discussion for now. I'm just flagging it for you because I think it's important for us pushing back about the kind of activities we do with young children. What does all of that I've been saying imply for early literacy learning? Okay. So I think I just want to remind you of that slide about motivation, about the desire to learn, about meaning, about play, about being involved and engaged. That's like the key to all of this, really. And Margaret Meek, who was a wonderful literacy activist in Britain, she said, we must make opportunities for children to read with desire and write with intent beyond that of pleasing adults. They have to be doing it because it's pleasing themselves. Okay, so The one thing that we alluded to in the beginning, we're not reading aloud nearly enough to children. And of course, to do this, you have to learn how to do it. I did a whole 6 sessions on reading aloud recently, which will be available on the website. I mean, reading aloud is a topic one can talk about for weeks in itself. Okay, so the thing to notice there is the tension, the joint attention. Everybody is there together in that story. The reader has caught the attention of the audience, and that is when the magic happens. Okay, so you have that, you have lots, you need a conduit of these stories coming to you, and then you begin, because you are following your role models, to behave like a reader. This is an old clip, but it really, I think, talks to what young children do. Okay, so I'm not sure who has heard of the term concepts of print, but this example gives one a nice opportunity to talk about the concepts of print that young children need to learn as they're learning to read and write. And this little girl is displaying several concepts of print that she has understood. And there are things that often we just take for granted, like she knows which way round the book goes. She knows that this book has something of value for her. She knows that the pictures and the story together are telling a story, and she is retelling that story, pointing to the salient parts for her as she does it. So she is using the visuals and the words, because if you notice, she's pointing to the words as well, to retell the story. So this little girl, from her experiences, is bringing what she knows. She knows she must turn the pages. There are a whole lot of concepts of print that she has learned. And in the preschool years, in the early childhood centers, when children aren't getting those many experiences with print that children need, we can do it in the early years settings. And luckily now we have many more books for very young children than we did have previously, and in their languages. So it's all of these experiences that work together, that link together to make to allow children to understand how to read and to write. And I want to just share a clip from Bib.
Urifilwe wayemuhle njengephimbo lakhe ecula kamnandi kangaka. Urifilwe wayemuhle njengephimbo lakhe angokuthi inkosana uTumi yangenwa uthando olujulile ngaye. Inkosana ayihlale imvakashela zonke izinsuku emuva okuhamba komthakathi. Masinyana emuva kwalokho
Okay, so listening, looking at the book at the same time, hearing the book and listening. I don't know if there are any funders besides HCI with us, but if you are there, one of the biggest things we need, and I've tried to get this to happen, not successfully so far, is that BIB, who is this amazing audio library for African books now, including children's books, needs to come together with the publishers to produce packs where we can have children listening to the story and reading the book at the same time. We now have them, but they're separate. We need to put them together and give children those chances, because if you don't have enough opportunities with real adults reading, you can have the listening that is rich in itself. It's beautifully read. And then, of course, from that input comes the output of play, hairdressing, dealing with hair, dealing with dreadlocks, and so on. And we have many, many examples of this from our story play. And just to go into this a little bit, what we did with story play was we put together a series of books. We're still building on those as we go along. So take the 3 Billy Goats graph, then we bring in all these different elements for teachers or practitioners to use with the children. So it is the listening to the story, the looking at the story, the talking about the story, the stimulus to play, to find props that can work with the story, to write with the children so that we're the role models for writing. This one happened to be in English. It can also produce writing in any language, which is a huge advantage. And just because children can't yet read does not mean we don't write with them. It means we do write with them, and we tell them what we're writing. We slow down, we show them what we're doing. Okay, so this is slightly older children now when they can write a bit or they copy. Copying is great sometimes when you know what you want to say. You need to be able to copy sometimes. Sometimes you need to just try for yourself. But the whole point is that we are constantly and daily writing with the children, pointing out, noticing features of print and writing together. It is when you write that you actually need to sound out letters to make words. So all the phonics, the blending and so on that we are so obsessed with in this country now, along with countries all over the world, that actually happens when you are writing, because you have to, as a young writer learning to spell, you have to learn how to do that. So we need far more focus in the preschool on emergent writing and what that involves than on trying to teach children any kind of early phonics out of context. It's always in context. So the playing, the making props include written props, and then the children will follow. Okay, going outdoors, even if you've got a very difficult, compromised outdoors, one can always just find a few stones, a few leaves that you then raise into the story for the monster to eat, for the goats to eat. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be manufactured in a, it doesn't have to be bought. It can be found. Okay, now we're going to move on to another one of these books, and I'm sharing another example of this little guy because he's just so impressive, and also just to show you that books can cover a lot of age groups. We don't have to just not read to babies because we haven't got baby books, although we do want to have baby books. Here is 3 friends in a taxi being shared with this little guy.
Isikhepe nabo beyakugaleleka elwandle ekugqibeleni yaphela luhambo. Ubani lona? Udriver kubantwana uSengubani udriver?
Umqhubi wantoni? Umqhubi wetekisi kuthi wacela imali yakhe. Yo nantsi ingxaki kayo. Wahlawula ugushana imali yakhe yalingana. Kungoko unyanamhla oku nanini na ugushana ebona itekisi isiza akangami. Usuka yenza suka thi very good. Usuke anyantsule kuloo ndlela. Yena ishishini lakhe letekisi liphelile. Asibone omnye ke ngoku. Ugushana uyanyantsula. Ubhokhwana yena wahlawula imali encinci kakhulu. Kungoko unanamhla oku nanini na ubhokhwana ebona itekisi isiza uthi very good. Uthi
So, you know, when you look at an incident like this, one must realize that this little guy is just probably 2.5 maybe, going on for maybe he's 3. He's talking already in 2 languages. He has had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of experiences like this with different people and by himself with books and stories. He has had so many experiences, and this is our challenge, to really put on steroids the sheer number of good experiences that children are able to have in their early years with material. So here in a completely different setting, the same book. And also I think you notice as through all these examples, there's this shared attention when the adult draws the child's attention or the child draws the adult's attention to different parts of text or of a page. And even when a little child is doing it for themselves, they're pointing. So it's this kind of focusing in on different features of reading that are so key. And one of the things that I think we're doing in South Africa is we're offering a lot of the opportunities, but we're not yet able to be the adults who are able to know what kind of things we draw our children's attention to, nearly as much as we need to be. So they're the 3 friends in the taxi. I'm sure all of you know it because Biblionef has been giving it out. 3 Friends in the Taxi is one of the books that's around. So then the children in the preschool go on taxi journeys. This book links really profoundly to where they're at in their real life, and they absolutely love it. And then we come in with the props, and the props are recycled stuff. There's nothing that has to be bought. It's all there to be used. We also remember Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, where you're taking children to where they want to be. So we know they want to be having a taxi, so we can put print there in terms of pretending it's a, what's that thing called? With the numbers, the number plate. Okay, so that's what we bring in. And then you see these little people making money. So, yeah, it's too noisy. So it's the noise level again, but also seeing how children are able to focus through the noise when they are really, really involved in some kind of play. And there's a lovely kind of summary of the 12 features of play, which I use, but I haven't got time to go through. But when one looks one needs to observe children carefully to see the kind of play they're involved in. And the more that children play in a rich way, obviously the deeper their play becomes. And to me, even though this is a very poor setting and there's not much in the way of resources, the children are doing very rich play. Again, the stimulating curiosity with print close up. This isn't a great clip, but it just suggests it for you.
Do you know that that's the same word in a different language?
What does it say?
What does it say? It says Tundisa.
So that's the multilingual classroom where you can bring in print from different languages, get children interested in it. We're not expecting them to learn it, but they will use that root that I was talking about to recognize it, and that is an important part of learning to read. So they will gain an interest in the other languages, and that is really important in South Africa, that very young children, African language speaking and English, raise the status in their heads, or have the status raised in their heads, of African languages as languages for literacy. Because one of our big challenges is that people equate literacy with English, not with African languages, once you get past a certain point. So valuing African languages. Okay. Chances, children need lots and lots of chances to integrate writing in play. I'm just going to show you bits of these clips quickly. So that's one. So the writing happens in the context of play. I'm not quite sure what she was doing there, but the children in this setting were very involved with feeding babies, with looking after babies, making food, feeding, and also giving them medicine. So looking after them. So it could have been writing something about the medicine. Then here's another little one. So that little doll is getting a chance to read. That little girl is valuing that piece of paper, which to her represents having something on it to read. That means she appreciates that reading is important. She's showing it to the doll. She's playing, she's pretending, she is rehearsing real life, and her real life involves that concept of print, which is a really important indicator that she is on the way to becoming a reader and a writer, for that matter. So here we're coming to composing, and we, in story play, we include that aspect, which is part of Vivian Gasson-Paley's approach, where the children tell their stories and the adults write them down. What we found, and what I think everybody will find, is that unless you have a value of story happening, so the reading aloud, the writing together, the telling of stories and so on, children don't really have much to say, and they come into their storying, they gain the confidence to compose when we value their composing and when we tell them lots of stories. But at first, the stories are often very mundane. They might not even make much sense. I went to the beach as this little girl. I haven't got the whole story there, but that's just suggesting to you the adult is the writing role model for the child. So when children are not in environments, or even when they are in environments where there is writing happening in the home, often the adults are too busy to write with the children. This is a strategy for all children, for poorly resourced settings and well-resourced settings. But in poorly resourced settings and African language settings, it is particularly valuable because you are creating text in an African language or in English, and you get to know the children's level of language and their knowledge of language. So it's this whole thing of expressing yourself. A young life is a whole life. They're not just being prepared for school or for the future. And so this has to be about authentic communication. It's so interesting that so many children would start a story by just telling you numbers. I've got many examples of that. And that's because I think in the preschools, they taught numbers. And then, I mean, this one is a Bible story is my book and my balloon and my ice cream and my chocolate and my 3 years and my checkers and my pizza and my brook. So you get all kinds of stories that are deeply related to a young child's life, and they are revealing something of themselves to us. So they're trusting us. There was a house, and a house was burning, and a person came and threw the water, and the rainbow came. Isn't that a great little story that gives hope at the end, which we all need? Here's a translation. Long, long ago, it was at home. I had eaten only meat with my youngest sibling. My sibling, 2 siblings, had eaten all the rice. After that, we went to church in the evening in Matsaleni with my youngest siblings and the older 2. After that, we had food. After that, we sang our song. Our song says, "Oh, Father, it is long the road we are traveling." Children have so much to say. They are involved in so much all the time that we don't know about when we're busy pouring skills into their heads. There was a small child holding a doll and a dummy. She wore tackies because she wanted to get into her car. She was wearing a hat. Then they have chances to play in one another's stories. If all of this looks very simple, but it's actually quite complex, intricate work, and the adult needs good training to facilitate it well. I'm not going to go into it now because it is something that requires time on itself. Okay, so those kind of rich experiences with books, with stories, with play, with exploring. But then also, in addition, children have to have, and I alluded to this, chances to become curious and notice how print works. And I'm just using these examples. There are so many, but close up. It's that close up attention. Very young children don't only need one simple form of alphabet. The world is complex out there. They're very good at working out the complexity. And it's interesting if you show them how you can write things in different ways. Bilingual, multilingual children already know you can say things in different ways. Okay, we need alphabets. I've seen now quite a bit of stuff about that children don't know the alphabet yet. They only don't know the alphabet because we're not sharing the alphabet with them in a way that's accessible and interesting. So this is just one example. We really, really need the alphabet on every wall in every classroom, and we need teachers to be using the alphabet so that children get used to what it is. They sing a song or whatever, you make it up. There's a rhyme in Xhosa. I don't know about other languages, abekuteni, and so on. The alphabet is key. You can't learn to read and write without knowing your alphabet. So they need to become fascinated by the look and sound of words and how they fit together. This is what leads to these phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, but it can be done in very pleasurable, fun-filled, interesting ways for children, okay? And really this book, you don't have to have a book to do it. You can work it out for yourself. I'll show you now some other examples. So, but the point is that playing with letters and words stimulates interest and motivation. Children have to realize that letters are always positioned in a particular way. This is one of the concepts of print that they have to learn. So, you know, they know that other things can face different ways. A chair is always a chair, but a H is not always an H. I should have put an H here, you know, and well, actually an H is always an H, but it can only face one way. But these ones, you know, are the same or different depending on how they orient it. And the point is the orientation, understanding it comes with seeing it in a real context, not with doing rows and rows of them in a rote fashion, okay? Personal experience, again, we've got to always be, and I think people do this more than they do other things. So a lot of allowing children to feel personally connected to the alphabet in various ways. Just ordinary packaging has got so much to teach about literacy, you know, and even I found a multilingual packet of carrots once. Does orange, because there's a picture of an orange, a child might say that says orange, but does orange begin with a C? If we had it begin with a C, it would be corange or orange if you wanted to do it in Xhosa. So you play around with the way that sounds come together to make words. You know, find how many times you can find cut green beans. It's in here somewhere as well. I can't see now, but what if there's no C in front of cook? You'd have ook. What if we put a B for beans in front of ook? We'd have book. You know, all of these kind of things, and one can make it really funny and fun as well. And humor is really important for young children, as we know. Different kinds of beans, yes, if you put the same packaging with slight differences together, you can see the patterns, and then you can see what's the same and you can see what's different. You can also go on a whole kind of journey of exploration of where coffee comes from. So it's also about knowledge. It's about learning about language in a meaningful, interesting context, always. Yeah, and their Kellogg's, whatever, you can get the children to bring in their packaging from home and look at it. But there's just an endless amount of stuff that one could do if one realizes how much this matters to children's growing, emerging knowledge. Okay, and then of course outside you can collect bits of nature and bring them in, and you can talk about where paper came from and how paper used to, you know, how it used to be, was it found in Egypt, and papyrus and so on. All of this is authentic communication. I haven't talked at all really about oral language for early literacy. It's implied. The communication we have and the complexity of language we use is teaching children all the time about vocabulary and context. Yeah, so just what we write on and so on. You can make letters, you can make the alphabet, all of these very, very simple, very cheap things or free things that can be done if you have the mindset to concentrate on it. Okay, I'm coming to the end now, and I'm just going to briefly share another strategy that we've been using, and we're busy now trying to get this going again in more settings, where we use a little soft toy. We call it Berana. I think I've heard of this being done in other ways as well, but with Berana, idea is to take the story home with a book, exercise book and a pen and some crayons. The children in one classroom community share one bear, and Bearana comes from charity shops or secondhand shops or wherever we can find it. It could be an African animal if one can find them, or if somebody makes them or whatever. But the thing is, it connects to children needing to love, to nurture, to invest symbolic meaning into this little animal who is a story collecting bear. So Bearana goes home and asks parents to either read stories, tell stories, or write down their own stories. And this is what we did in Vrygrond. It bridges the child's inner and outer world. It bridges their home and their school. It brings parents or caregivers in communication with teachers. It is the simplest, most wonderful strategy or initiative, I think. And I mean, we got these amazing stories. So we had one book in this particular case. And this was a very diverse community where children spoke different languages, but there was quite a bit of English at home. There was quite a bit of Afrikaans. And I think the parents wrote in English. Some of them wrote in African languages, but these are English examples because they knew the teacher was an English-speaking teacher. So you can see that they're quite extensive little stories that happened. And what is also interesting is that we start to see how the stories that we share with children, like in this case, this one, Sipho, it's called That's Better, one of the Little Hands books. Sipho comes into the little boy's story, and this did happen quite a bit, and it's a good way of getting children to tell their own stories because the story becomes a scaffold for them. It's just the nurturing of this little creature. Bearana became called Cupcake in one setting. So the stories about Cupcake and my mommy and me, I was holding Cupcake and playing with him. I went to bed with Cupcake. We watched TV together. I was singing a song for Cupcake. Tula tu, tula baba, tula sana. And then you get a sense that this child is actually bilingual because the song that they sing is that, and maybe the teacher hasn't even thought what language the child speaks at home, and maybe this would nudge the teacher. Here's a story by a little boy who I think he was from outside of South Africa, so I don't think he had a African language, but he was having a South African language. He was having a real good go, and it gives the teacher a very good indication of his English capacity. Shark by the beach. Once upon a time, there was a shark outside. It was cloudy and something. Shark got very angry by the beach. People scared in the car. Then people fell inside sea. Shark puts them inside tummy. People scared in the tummy. It's very dark. Rain stop sharks. Spit people out. Nice and sunny, people enter boat and see big volcano going big and big. Shark laugh and say goodbye to people. People is not scared anymore because shark is happy, nice and sunny. And, you know, it's really amazing how young children turn to hope and to having faith that things get better, and they make things better often in their stories. And that is something we all have to keep alive as well. A few parents' comments on this. This is quite a long one. C immediately fell in love with Bearana, became Piranha, and she started to cuddle her and tickle her tummy, and then she asked Piranha to say, "Mommy, mommy." She fed Piranha. This is written down exactly how the adult wrote it. That's why you see the spelling. She also let Piranha make friends with a green dinosaur. There you see a green dinosaur. They were playing together, getting onto the dinosaur's back and hugging each other, walking the little teddy bear up and down. She enjoyed being a little mommy to Piranha. The thing is that it puts the parent in an observer role as well, which is really good. And it's a benign, if you like, role. They're not being asked to teach their children any skills. They're just asked to celebrate their child's play and their capacity to tell stories. So there is not training, but there's a workshop for parents to understand how to do this. Here's another one. Dee was so excited to tell his story, he couldn't wait. I think he has a good imagination. It's turning things around from this deficit model that children have something wrong with them that we're going to fix as we educate them, to saying they have capacity. This is what they know. This is what they can do. This is what they tell. These are their stories. I love this one because at the bottom, the adult writes, I never wrote it, it's N's story. Thank you. So again, it's a kind of a pride in their child's ability. Okay, what do we need to do to keep it happening day after day after day? Okay, so we need to make things culturally appropriate and relevant. We can't always be sharing things from, and I think everybody knows this here. Here's a very quick example of how my colleagues chose a song and then turned it into something that they trained with. Okay, so they then found at a charity shop these little items which seemed to work for the song. The song, by the way, is a song that needs probably sanitizing because I think it's a drinking song. And at first they said, no, we can't use it. And then we decided that we could use it because one could turn it into drinking anything. It doesn't have to be alcohol. And then here we just have a little bit working it out and pretending. Okay, and then you go into a training. Yeah, so it's about owning the space, your own songs, your own stories, whatever they may be. If you're in a diverse group, it's those. It's a mix. But it has to come from yourself. We have to get to know compelling stories. Every single preschool teacher has to have a basket, a rucksack, whatever, of books, stories, songs, rhymes that they know and they can tell. That would be a huge step forward. Browse, select, read. Sorry, I'm going quickly now because I think I'm running out of time. We have to grow our inner librarian. We have to have a shelf of books on our head appropriate for the age group that we are teaching. And I'm sure you've all gone through all of this over and over, so I won't read those out, but you know, we've got to be able to select. It's not just about any books, it's about compelling books. It's about books that grip, that transport children. We're still making them in South Africa. We haven't got a huge number of amazing stories, but we are getting there. Children who are read too often, we can assess. They're asked to be read aloud to. They examine books in details. They make up their own versions of the stories. They look at the books you've read to them. They reread them alone with other. All of these things are indicators of progress in learning to read. Early indicators, yes, but essential ones, okay? We in training do exactly what we want the children to be doing. So we experience it for ourselves. We use open-ended resources, items with no fixed purpose, so that we can be creative and we can transform and have things standing for other things. Okay, recycle, collect, make, and then make little imaginative spaces which respect the toys, the props, the books as much as we want the children to respect them, which will ignite some wonderful story in their heads, okay? For babies, we need to know the different age groups, what's appropriate for who. For toddlers, we need our practitioners, our teachers to explore what they need to do for the different age groups, okay, in our trainings. It's that invitation to pretend, to play, to story. Okay, I'm not going to go through the models. I'm going to stop there so that we can have time for talk, questions. Thank you for listening to me.
No, thank you very much, Carole. Yeah, so this is a proper lecture, you know. There's a lot to think about. There's a lot to practice at the same time. But before we get more into it, there is a question in the chat room. It has to do with Uberana. That's for you, Carole. Yeah, I don't know if you saw it, but it says, what is the theory behind the need for Uberana, a toy, as a bridge between the child's engagement with stories? What does this additional element do that would otherwise not happen? Can you please respond to that?
Yes, so it does a lot. So the one thing it does is it provides a real reason for having stories happening at home between an adult and the child. So that's the one thing. It's inviting. It's not telling them, but it's inviting them to tell and to tell stories and write children's stories down at home. The bear gathers these stories, and then the bear goes back to school with the story that the child has just told. And then the teacher asks the children if they would like their story shared with the other children. If they do, they will read it out aloud. So it's another opportunity for the child to feel special and to have their story shared. If the child doesn't want to, they don't. But in my experience, what I've observed, the children really want to share their stories in their group as well as doing it at home. In addition, that little Berana is something special that everybody wants to take home. You know, we did it in a grade 1 class recently with my colleague Ntombi. I don't know if Ntombi's here, but we did it with Ntombi. She did it with some grade 1 children. And she was very nervous that these children would just think, oh, this is silly, because she made a big thing about it, saying, I've got a friend who's coming to see you. He's a collector of stories. Will you be interested in telling your stories? They all said yes. And when she came back, she brought out this little rainbow bear. It's a little rainbow bear that she found. And she said she was just inside, she was thinking, oh, these children are going to just think I'm being stupid. They absolutely loved it. They loved Berana. Berana went home. And now when she sees them in the streets of Tanzania, they call her Mama Kaberana. So it's the bringing home and school life together, which is so affirming for children. And then there's also all the early literacy demonstrations, role modeling, valuing that is also happening. I don't know if that answers, but in a nutshell, that's what it is.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think it does, as it becomes a bridge, you know, for all these opportunities to explore different literacy practices, whether it is storytelling or story transforming into written story and bringing the story from home to school, you know. I think it goes back to the opportunities that you referred to that children need, you know, as early as possible with language, but also in meaningful context, yeah. There's a hand from iPhone. iPhone, I'm not sure who is your name, but there is a hand from iPhone. So maybe if you can just come in. Okay, iPhone is there. So it is Tebuka from Sikula Songe. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Malusi, and thank you to you, Carole. My name is Mtebuka from Sikula Sonke in Kaelicha. I heard you talked about providing lots of resources for children at a very early age. So my concern is around language. Is it really advisable to sort of use more than the mother tongue language in the early ages, like more especially in the first 1,000 days for a child? Because I've seen one of the examples, this young boy who was like, the lady was narrating a story in isiXhosa and the boy is English speaking. Is it not sort of giving too much to the child at that early age, or is it okay for us to throw everything on them? How is it? How is it doing in terms of their development? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's such a good question. You know, it is not too much, as you saw from that little boy, because he is totally enjoying himself. He is learning isiXhosa and he speaks English already, and he's learning to read in both those languages. It is too much if the context is not right and the opportunities aren't right. That person who was reading with him and doing things with him is an amazing role model for him. And he clearly loves her and is comfortable with her. And she is doing it in a way that connects to him very profoundly. So the capacity of young children to become bilingual very early on is great. We all should be having children in our society who are at least bilingual in the first 5 years. There's no reason why South African children shouldn't be, but it is how you do it. And so for children who don't have much exposure, say, to English, with people who speak English and can read and write in English in a similar way, say, as that woman was doing with that little boy in Xhosa, you know, if you don't have the role models, it's going to be different, but that doesn't mean that it's bad. You will tell from the child if it's too much. They won't be learning and hanging on to every word and repeating it and joining in. So it's about putting in place things and then observing how the child responds and adjusting what you do to make sure that you're not overloading the child. Nothing there is formal. It's all informal. It's all choice. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess also maybe Mtebuka, where he's coming to is maybe, would this not confuse a child in terms of which language then the child is speaking or can speak or can learn with? So yeah, maybe do you want to respond to that? Because maybe the too much also has to do with confusion, you know?
Yeah, well, he definitely is using words. He's using Xhosa words and English words in the same book. But he knows when he's speaking to the Xhosa speaker. He knows, and he knows when he's speaking to the English speaker, but the English speaker is valuing his Xhosa as well in that one clip. So yes, they will mix at first and switch between, but if they have enough demonstrations of the languages in context, they will make sense of it. It's not too much.
Yeah, thank you. And you said that actually we'll know from the child's response. So also maybe it is also important to be led by the child in the process. There was a question from Irish from Let's in KZN. He was asking is this Perana concept different from the Pasana doll? And then also Pam from Dumo Foundation is asking then, what is your comment on wordless picture books?
Yes, Berana is very different from the persona dolls, which persona dolls are great, but they have a very particular way of being used, and they are, I mean, if you left persona dolls in the space for the children to use them as they chose, it would be different to how the program uses persona dolls, as far as I understand anyway. So I think Berana gets used, the child is responsible for taking Berana home, for playing with Berana, for looking after Berana. We put trust in the child to use Berana how they want to, and then the storytelling, writing, Berana sits there with the parent and listens while the story gets told. It's a simpler, more open-ended kind of activity than persona dolls. Both have value, I'm sure, different value. And then wordless books. Wordless books are great. Depending on them, it's very hard to make a wonderful wordless book because it's complex, telling a good story through visuals only. So one has to be careful that if you are churning out wordless books or making a lot of them, that very quickly that it isn't just becoming quite a tedious exercise of sequencing images for the child, that is. I mean, I know we have intentions with wordless books. A great wordless book is a complex and beautiful thing. It's an art. But yes, it helps children with visual literacy. It helps them retell their own stories. And it helps in that there is no one language dominating in the book. However, I do feel that we want to be concentrating on giving children opportunities to retell story, to experience print in books. That's very important because we don't have enough of experiences with print in books, and that one can use a book in the wrong language as an opportunity to say, this book is written in English, or this book is written in isiXhosa. Let's see if we can find someone to translate it. Let's retell the story anyway. So to me, it's not an either or for young children. It's a both and. Yeah.
Yeah, not only one, but all. Thank you very much for that. Are there any other questions or comments from you colleagues? This is the last round of an opportunity to interact or share your own ideas or thoughts. There's also a comment from, I think, Equal around the children's brain development. Yeah, if there are no further questions or comments, Carole, let us imagine that you got me in a taxi, let's say to Masiphumelele, and then I'm getting off in the next 2 minutes from my stop, and then I ask you actually, what is it that we need to do actually to get children excited about stories? What will be your response?
Malusi, we have to really respect children's capacity to think, to imagine, to get involved in a really worthwhile story. So we have to be prepared. I think that is the key. We need to know our books, our stories. We need to rehearse them. We need to be able to retell them, not like a performer in a theater, but in a way that we feel confident and capable, and we're able to bring the children into that story. So it's about us being ready for the children with the material that is out there, and preparing ourselves, knowing the rhymes, knowing the songs, being the role models that they need.
Thank you very much. The need for us to be interactive role models to show what in the culture we hope for in terms of how our children.
But Malusi, also, I mean, I do think that I went through it very quickly, the whole thing actually, but you know, that thing of sharing attention and of noticing. I mean, when you're actually teaching, when children are learning how to read and the adult is really sharing attention about the way print works with them, that is what is missing a lot. It's not about formally teaching them properties of written language. It's about sharing the properties as you go along with them, so that they do notice those things and try it out. So emergent writing, for example, it is not enough to do invented spelling and what you say in Xhosa, yes, you can't, we don't want to stop there. What we do is we see that as part of the journey, but we're constantly giving them conventional little mini lessons so that they come to get theirs, like I was saying earlier on, get their model more and more conventional.
Yeah. No, thank you very much for that, Carole. Now I'll be handing over to Jamala to just say thanks to everyone. But as Jamala is coming up, maybe if you can just everyone write in the chat room, maybe what was your one takeaway from the session? For me, I think there is a lot, but just few for me, from this session is that it is important to understand maybe like how children, I guess, learn, you know, and also maybe what we need to do as adults around creating an environment that is enabling for children to learn, but also valuing, you know, the cultural context of what these children bring into our classrooms or even into our homes, but of course, having story opportunities every day, everywhere, all the time, that then will contribute towards the child's language development, even literacy, even going into then the big school. So thank you very much for that, Carole, and hopefully that everyone will have a collection of books that we can share anytime we see children. Yeah, so Jamala, over to you. Jamala is my principal. He's the CEO of the HCI Foundation. And yeah, Jamala, over to you.
Can you see me? I mean, it seems like my camera is not showing anything. Can you see me?
No, we can't see.
Okay, let me come to your side, Malusi. I see.
Okay,
I don't
sure.
know what is going on with my camera here.
All right. While Jamala is coming this side, just continue to share your one takeaway from this session. Yeah. And also Carole spoke about motivation, and it's always good that when motivation is intrinsic, comes from within the child to want to. But of course, the child cannot, if doesn't experience those kind of things in the space that he is it. Jamala is here. He's my neighbor.
Yes, we neighbor. Okay, thank you very much. I think Carole, really quite a lot that you've shared with us. But I think for people who are here, who I think this is what they do on a daily basis, working with children, I think there is a lot of wisdom and just a reminder of the important role that we play as practitioners, as organizations in the development of our country, but also most importantly, the development of the brain of our little one. I think if we want to see a country that is successful, that is prosperous, the best investment we can make is actually to make sure that our children, they are just excited about reading. They're excited about reading. They're able actually to imagine things by themselves and be able to write them down and make sense of it. When we talk about, 81% of our grade 4 learner cannot read for meaning, I think it just makes us think of a future that is bleak. But when we hear what you are doing, when we hear what our partners are doing here, everywhere in the country, I think it gives us hope that perhaps we'll be able to turn the tide. And with passion, with courage, with dedication, with the work that we are doing in town, city, village, rural area, everywhere, I feel like things can change. What we have to do is really just to create many platforms like this and to continue to encourage each other in the work that we do. So Carole, thank you very much really for just making the time to share so much wisdom, so much experience and knowledge with us. We really appreciate every little advice, every little information that you have shared with us. So thank you so much. To Sunita, I think Sunita, perhaps the presentation didn't do justice to the work that you do as Biblionef. One has to see the hanging library to appreciate the beauty of it. There is something beautiful about that hanging library. And when you hold it and you put it on your back or you show it to kids, I don't have mine here, we've got one in the office. I think for those who are doing play groups, people who are visiting homes, it's really quite an important resource, and would wish if it's possible for all our partners to have them. Is it possible? We don't know, but we have to take it one step at a time. But it's really a beautiful thing. If you can go maybe to the website of BiblioNet, or just try to engage with Sunette to see what it means. What is that really hanging library if you don't have it yet? So thank you very much, Sunette, for Sunita, for sharing that with us. For the rest of the team, people who are really part of our network, thank you very much for always making time to come and share or listen. I think today it was more about listening and maybe commenting here and there, but a lot of time you always share what you are doing as well in your own organization. So thank you very much for the time. For Malusi, who curated this session, and Sinetemba, who was behind the scene, and Fadila and everyone. So thank you very much. I wish you a lovely, well, it's still morning, morning, and we hope to meet again soon, maybe while we're visiting you or just by engaging with you in future. So thank you very much and have a lovely morning and afternoon. Okay, cheers, everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks, Carole, all the way in Germany. And yeah, thanks, Pam, I see you still here. Just one last announcement. On the 26th of July, we have our AGM. Yeah, I had to just sneak in that in there. But thank you very much. Bye, everyone. And thank you very much for sharing your takeaways from the group. We'll also share the recording. We'll put it on YouTube. So it will be accessible for those who didn't have audio at the time. So thank you very much. Bye,
everyone. Thank you for this.